Ahoy, friends! Gather around the campfire and let me tell you about the daring and dangerous world of piracy. It's a tale that spans centuries, from the high seas of ancient times to the modern-day shipping lanes. Brace yourselves, for we'll be delving into the depths of pirate lore, uncovering the true stories behind these seafaring scoundrels. Pirates have been around for as long as people have been sailing the seas, preying on unsuspecting vessels and plundering their cargo. Back in the 14th century BC, there was this group called the Lucca, who were already causing trouble off the coast of what's now Turkey. And let's not forget the ancient Greeks and Romans. They had their fair share of pirate problems too, until good old Pompey came along and gave those scallywags a taste of their own medicine, allegedly taking out over 10,000 of them. Well, as time went on, piracy became a way of life in certain parts of the world, especially where trade routes flourished. The Mediterranean was a hotbed for corsairs, North African pirates who made a living robbing and plundering ships. Then there were the Barbary pirates, who ruled the waves from the 15th to the 16th centuries. And let's not forget the heyday of the Spanish Main, where daring buccaneers like Henry Morgan and Blackbeard prowled the Caribbean, waiting to pounce on those laden Spanish galleons. The golden age of piracy. Now that's when things really got interesting. We're talking late 1600s to the early 1700s, a time when piracy was at its peak. This was the era of legendary scallywags like Calico Jack, who caused quite a stir by allowing women pirates like Annie Bonny and Mary Read onto his crew, and Blackbeard, with his fearsome appearance and intimidating tactics. These Golden Age pirates had a certain flair, let me tell you. They flew the iconic Jolly Roger flag, striking fear into the hearts of their victims. Their attire was a sight to behold. Tricorn hats, extravagant coats, and of course the obligatory peg leg or hook for a hand. And let's not forget the parrots, the cutlasses, and the flintlock pistols, all part of the pirates' arsenal. Now, when it comes to pirate ships, you might be picturing massive galleons with dozens of cannons and billowing sails. But the truth is, most Golden Age pirates preferred smaller, faster vessels like sloops and schooners. These nimble ships allowed them to outmaneuver their prey and escape into shallow waters when needed. And contrary to popular belief, these pirates weren't always after piles of gold and jewels. More often than not, their plunder consisted of practical goods like tobacco, rum, and sugar. The whole idea of treasure maps and buried riches? Well, that's mostly thanks to stories like Treasure Island and the romanticized tales that followed. When it came time to attack, these scallywags had a few tricks up their sleeves. Sometimes they'd approach their target openly, flying the Jolly Roger and hoping to intimidate the crew into surrendering without a fight. Other times, they'd use smaller boats and grappling hooks to board the enemy ship, disable the rudder, and engage in good old-fashioned hand-to-hand combat on the deck. Of course, not every attack went smoothly, and that's when the heavy artillery came into play. Cannons would blast away, firing deadly chain shots and grape shot to take out the rigging and sailors alike. If they managed to capture a ship, well, let's just say the fate of the crew wasn't always a pretty sight. Conscripted into piracy, sold into slavery, or marooned on a deserted island with little to no provisions. And let's not forget about the dreaded keel hauling. See, if a pirate on their own crew stepped out of line, the punishment could be downright brutal. They'd tie a rope around the scoundrel and drag him right under the ship's keel. With all those barnacles clinging to the hull, well, you can imagine the kind of shredding that would do to a man's skin and clothes. But enough about the good old days. Let's talk about modern piracy. Because, believe it or not, this scourge of the seas is still very much alive and kicking. In recent years, pirate attacks have been on the rise, especially off the coasts of places like Indonesia, Somalia, and Bangladesh. These modern-day pirates may not have the same flair as their predecessors, but they're just as ruthless and dangerous. They often strike at night, using speedboats and grappling hooks to board unsuspecting cargo ships and tankers. And instead of plundering for treasure, they're after more practical loot. personal valuables, electronics, and whatever's in the ship's safe. These days, pirates are more likely to take the whole crew hostage than maroon them. They keep them as bargaining chips to demand a nice ransom from the shipping companies. And if the ransom doesn't get paid in full and on time, well, let's just say the crime scene photos wouldn't be pretty. Another trick these modern buccaneers like to pull is hijacking an entire vessel, cargo, crew, and all. Then it's off to some seedy port where they can slap a new coat of paint on her, give her a fresh name, and poof, instant phantom ship ready to be used for all sorts of illegal dealings. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What kind of walnut-brained fool would willingly choose a life of piracy with all its risks? Surely there has to be some sort of incentive besides just the loot. Well, as cruel as it sounds, for some of the younger crews just getting their sea legs, piracy represented a chance at freedom, a way to escape the oppressive rule of the East India Company merchantmen, whose captains treated their sailors like dogs. At least as a pirate, a man could vote for his officers, have an equal share of the plunder rather than a measly wage. They had their own rough codes to follow, sure, but it beat being a low-life nobody. Of course, that's just the romanticized idea pirates had of their so-called life of liberty. In reality, it was a harsh existence, being constantly infested with weevils, eating rancid meat, and stagnant drinking water that would turn your stomach. Not exactly the life of carefree freedom and leisure you might picture, was it? So there you have it, friends. A glimpse into the world of piracy, from the romanticized golden age to the harsh realities of modern-day marauders. Just remember, the next time you set sail, keep a weather eye on the horizon and your cutlass at the ready. For as long as there are ships on the sea, there will always be pirates lurking in the depths, waiting to strike.